Looking at our world from a theological perspective. This is the Theology Central Podcast, making theology central.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is Sunday, April the 14th, 2024. It is currently 3:38 p.m. Central Time, and I am coming to you live from the Theology Central studio located right here in Abilene, Texas. Now, the one thing that is absolutely true of every single person, it doesn't matter your gender, doesn't matter your race, doesn't matter your religion, doesn't matter. Something is true of every single one of us, and that is we are going to make mistakes. We are going to do things wrong. We're going to mess up. We're going to possibly hurt people. We're going to disappoint people. We may betray people. We may let people down. We may deceive people. We are going to make mistakes. We're going to mess up, and sooner or later, because you do these things, at some point you're going to find yourself where you have to say, I'm sorry. You're going to have to say, it was my fault. I messed up. You're going to have to offer an apology. And sometimes that can be very difficult. It can be humiliating. It can bother you. Some people may be very good at offering an apology. They offer it and they're able to move on. Other people, maybe they offer an apology, but it just stays with them for weeks and months to come because they feel like, man, I need to be perfect. And they just never can seem to get over it. Maybe some people just have a hard time apologizing. They don't like to admit they were wrong. They'll say, I'm sorry, but, you did do this and you did do that. Well, okay, well, are you really sorry? Maybe you say you're sorry when you don't really think you're sorry. You just sometimes will apologize just to end conflict, even though you don't really think that you did anything wrong. There could be good in that. There could be bad in that. But apologies are a part of life, and people approach them in many different ways, and many people struggle. Now, this next part may be shocking to some of you. Pastors make mistakes. Pastors say things that they should never say. They think things they should never think. They lust when they should not lust. They hold grudges. There's bitterness. There's unforgiveness. There's sometimes hatred. They make mistakes. They make mistakes at home. They make mistakes in the church office. They make mistakes behind the pulpit. They make mistakes on their own, with their family, with friends, in the public. They make mistakes and they mess up. And sometimes they have to apologize. Sometimes they have to apologize for sin, just like anybody else has to apologize for sin. Because one thing is true of everyone. Not only do we make mistakes and we mess up, we sin. We commit sin. Everyone does. And sometimes that sin requires you to go to people and say, I messed up, and to confess that sin and say, this is my sin. This is what I've done wrong. I need your forgiveness. And you know what? Asking for an apology or confessing sin and asking for an apology, no matter which category and how you describe it and how it plays out, it can be difficult and it can be humiliating. It can be very difficult. And sometimes as a pastor, if you're confessing sin or apologizing, what you get is, the only reason they're apologizing is because they got caught, or they don't really mean it. And even though they apologize, what do they think? They should. And then everyone wants, 700 different things to happen to them, minus maybe death. And so all of it can be difficult. All of it can be difficult. But what happens if a pastor, we're going to put this in the category, well, you know what? Let's not do that. Let's do it this way. Well, just think about a loved one, maybe a husband, boyfriend, girlfriend, wife, child, family member of any kind. They've done something wrong. They really upset you. They really hurt you. And they come and maybe they knock on the door, or maybe they walk into the living room, or maybe they go into the bedroom and they sit you down and they look at you and say, you know what? I made a mistake and I want to apologize. And they start to they offer an apology, and you feel really good about the apology. You're like, oh, that was very nice. That was wonderful what you said to me. Thank you so much. You hug, you kiss, you make up. Everything seems wonderful. And then 2, 3, 4 days later, you're on the internet and you're looking around and you hear someone giving an apology, and it's word for word the apology that was given to you. How do you feel? Do you like, well, you know what? At least they took the time to look up an apology online and to memorize it. I got to give them credit for doing that. And they delivered it in a very heartfelt way. They delivered it. They seemed very sincere. You know what? They put in a lot of work and effort to find an apology, memorize it, and deliver it in a sincere way. Would you be happy with that, or would you be very upset and very hurt? What would you do if your pastor offered an apology? You thought it was maybe very sincere, very heartfelt, and then you got on the internet and found out that the possibility that he plagiarized his apology. Now, at this point, it may not even be what they did wrong. You may be more bothered by an apology. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to think about apologies and apologizing and all of the ins and outs of that. But I want you to think about the possibility of someone plagiarizing an apology. How would you feel if it was just family, loved one, whomever, friend, or whatever relationship it is? And then how would you feel if a pastor plagiarized his apology? Now, the reason I'm asking all of these questions and getting you hopefully thinking about this very important subject is because I came home from church. I'd been home, a little bit of time, and I get a message from my daughter, and it's a link to a TikTok video. Here is the TikTok video. Let me see if I can get you the information from this TikTok video. Let me see if I can. This comes from, hang on, April AJOY. April AJOY. I don't know anything about this person. They're on TikTok. My daughter sent this to me. I'm going to play the audio from this TikTok video. And it's about, apologizing, but how a pastor apologized to his congregation, but it may have been completely plagiarized. You listen and tell me what you think.
So I have an update on that pastor who made that misogynistic joke. So the Roy's report reported that his apology might have been plagiarized. Josh Howerton's apology sounds eerily similar to a different pastor's apology from 2022. Can you spot the similarities?
As you find your way to Psalm 34, I just need to address a thing.
I need to address a thing. I'm going to address a thing. Okay.
The Bible says in Proverbs 12:18 that careless words stab like a sword, and wise words lead to healing.
Is that careless words can stab like a sword, but that wise words lead to healing.
And what the Bible means in Proverbs 12, when it says careless words stab like a sword, it means regardless of your intent, like if I was careless with a pocket knife and it slipped out of my hand and stabbed you in the face.
And what that verse means is that even if somebody had a steak knife and they had the intent to cut their steak and their hand slipped and accidentally stab you in the face.
Church, I need you to hear this, okay? 3 things. I love you. I love you. I love this church. I love getting to do this thing together.
Hey, I need you to hear 3 things. Number 1, I love you.
I swear megachurch pastors are just cookie cutter versions of each other. There's no originality and no substance.
What do you think about that? It sounds like the apologies were almost word for word with just slight changes. The exact same thing. Everything was exactly the same. Now, how do you feel about that? Now, again, I'm not trying to make any major judgments because, as I've said, pastors mess up, pastors make mistakes, pastors fail. You fail, we all fail, and we have to give apologies. And some people struggle with an apology. Now, did he plagiarize or did he not plagiarize? Let's say he did. Why do you think he plagiarized? Did he have a hard time coming up with an apology? Did he feel like he actually didn't do anything wrong? Well, I don't know. I don't know how to process this. The story in that TikTok, they mentioned the Roy's report. On April the 13th, 2024 at 9:11 a.m., so this was yesterday, 9:11 a.m., This is what it says. Did Josh plagiarize his apology? His last name is Howerton. Howerton. I don't know how you would say his name. Did he plagiarize his apology? I think she said his name. Let me go back. I think she said his name. Let's go back and listen to it real quick.
So I have an update on the pastor who made that misogynistic joke. So the Roy's report reported that his apology might have been plagiarized. Josh Howerton's apology sounds eerily similar to a different pastor's apology.
Josh Howerton, I think is how she said it. Josh Howerton. I'm assuming she's correct and I'm not, because when it comes from me pronouncing names, I always get them wrong. All right, so Josh Howerton. All right, now, this is what the story says. This is on julieroys.com. You can go look at it for yourself. Go to the Roy's report. Here's what it says. It appears Texas megachurch pastor Josh Howerton may have plagiarized a Florida pastor in his apology to his congregation last Sunday. Howerton's apology, which concerned a joke about women doing whatever their husbands want on their wedding night, was almost word for word the same apology given by Florida pastor Joby Martin 2 years ago. Now, I don't know if you heard what this pastor had to say in regards to women on their wedding night. I know it created a backlash and there was controversy and everyone was mad and everyone was upset and everyone was furious. And in fact, I had it saved in my notes to address it because I understood what he was trying to do. But I think maybe you could argue it was not appropriate to say from the pulpit. You could argue, were people being overly sensitive? Or could he be arguing, does it point to a bigger issue? Like, there was a lot of things we could talk about. So there was a lot of different ways to address it. But whether you agreed with it, disagreed with it, whatever the case may be, obviously the backlash was bad enough that Josh Howerton had to give an apology. So this Texas megachurch pastor, he may, though, here's the issue, plagiarized his apology. Now that to me is much more offensive than what he supposedly said. I would be much more concerned with the sincerity of an apology if it was plagiarized. This is what the Roy's report goes on to say. On Sunday, Howerton, pastor of Lake Point Church in the Dallas area, started his apology by saying he needed to address a thing. Howerton then explained that he made a joke that had landed wrong on a few people. And then Howerton said he was just trying to have fun. He acknowledged that according to Proverbs, careless words can stab like a sword, but that wise words lead to healing. And what that verse means is like if someone had a steak knife and they had the intent to cut their steak and then slipped and actually stabbed you in the face. I still need to own that, Howerton said. In a similar way, on August the 22nd, Joby Martin, lead pastor of the Church of 1122 in Jacksonville, Florida, told his congregation that he also needed to address a thing. Martin then said that he had spoken about breastfeeding in his sermon the previous week. And though Martin said he meant the comment as a joke, he recognized that he had been careless with his words. The Bible says in Proverbs 12:8 that careless words stab like a sword and wise words lead to healing. Martin said. And what the Bible means in Proverbs 12 is when it says careless words stab like a sword, it means regardless of your intent, like if I was careless with a pocket knife and it slipped out of my hand and stabbed you in the face, it is still my responsibility. Martin and Howerton also concluded their apologies the exact same way. In 2022, Joby said, church, I need you to hear this. Okay, 3 things. I love you. I love this church and I love getting to do this thing together. And again, I'm sorry. And I want to say thank you. Thank you for the grace that has given me every single week to stand up here and do what I do. And hope by God's grace, I'll get to do this for decades and decades to come. Likewise, Howerton said on Sunday, I need you to hear 3 things. Number 1, I love you. Now listen, Lake Point Church, I love you more than you will ever imagine. Number 2, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for something that felt like careless words. Let me rephrase. I'm sorry for careless words. I'm sorry about that. And number 3, thank you for your grace to me. I want to be doing with this for decades and decades to come. Now, the Roy's report reached out to Howerton to explain why his apology so closely resembled Joby's apology, but did not receive a reply by time of publication. Of course not, all right? Howerton has faced criticism since March for telling the controversial joke, all right? So they go in about the joke. I don't want to get into that. Howerton also faced criticism after his apology Sunday because the Roy's report, as the Roy's report reported, Howerton had told the same joke and received same negative feedback 3 years earlier. And private messages from 2021, which were shared with the Roy's report, Howerton wrote to a visitor offended by the joke, "I'll genuinely take that into consideration for the future and beg your grace in advance for when I say something that's amiss in your eyes." So they go on and talk about the original joke. I'm not here to get into the original joke, but it seems like he told the joke and then kind of, I guess, repeated the joke 3 years later. So then, did he ever learn his lesson? Whatever. All right. Now, Howerton has been accused of plagiarism in the past. In the past, he has been called out for plagiarizing. In 2022, they analyzed a sermon of Howerton's that had 5 pithy sayings, 4 of which came from sources other than Howerton. All right. And so examples, verbatim quotes similar to wording between Howerton's sermons and a text of a book by Andy Stanley. She also noted that Howerton used a phrase disgraced Pastor Mark Driscoll had used repeatedly. And she said Howerton quoted Pastor Stephen Furtick and Rick Warren in his sermon without citing them. Now, Howerton responded to this criticism in a blog post claiming that using other pastors' material without citing them is okay because almost every pastor tells other pastors to use anything from his sermon that will help them. Howerton also said it's not lying to pass off other people's work as his own. It's only a lie if a preacher actually lies and specifically takes credit for something he knows he did not create. So we could get into the never-ending fight and argument about what is plagiarism and what is not plagiarism from the pulpit. We could debate that all day. I'm not here to rehash that debate. I'm not here to get into that. What I want to talk about is an apology. I want to talk about apologizing because that's something we all have to do. Look, if you haven't apologized today, you probably will somewhere before the day is over, or you may go to bed not apologizing when you really needed to apologize. What makes apologizing so hard for so many people? What makes it difficult? Now, to me, the most important thing in an apology, right now, you can judge whether this pastor plagiarized or not. To me, it's way too similar to say it wasn't plagiarized. That something just doesn't make sense to me. But I cannot ultimately judge because I don't ultimately know, right? And ultimately, it's between that pastor and his congregation how they want to proceed and how they accept it or don't accept it, or what he can do to make it right. The main thing, what I would want is that they can all fix the problem, and then he deals with whatever the past joke was, move on past it, and then that the congregation and the pastor can mend whatever, this rift this may cause and fix it, and then everyone can move on. But for me, it's a bigger issue. It's about apologizing. So then the question really is sincerity and apology. Sincerity. Now, some people believe that if you apologize after you got caught, then immediately your apology is not sincere. And I think that that's rubbish. I think that's complete rubbish. Why? David apologized. David confessed after he was caught. Are you going to tell me his apology wasn't sincere? His confession wasn't sincere? Because I don't know, it made it in the Bible? So I think it was sincere. You can get caught and be sincerely sorry that you did what you did. You say, well, you should apologize beforehand. Maybe you should have. That's woulda, shoulda, coulda, right? Everyone's so good at telling everyone else, well, this is what you should have done. This is what you shouldn't have done this. You shouldn't have done that. You should have did it this way. Well, great. Congratulations. How about you just follow all of the rules that you want to give to everyone else? The people make mistakes and mess up. They mess up, which requires an apology, and sometimes they may mess up and not apologizing. So whatever, they may even mess up in their apologizing. But what we have to do is not worry about judging whether someone else's apology is sincere. I'm not even judging if this pastor's apology is sincere. I think if it's plagiarized, it calls into question the sincerity of it. I think that that's fair to say. But even then, I'm not going to be dogmatic. What I'm going to say is we have to be concerned with our own apologies. So when you apologize, why are you apologizing? Now, here's the thing. Sometimes you can apologize just because you want to end conflict. You just want it to stop. And you just say, I'm sorry, it's all my fault. So it looks, nope, all my fault. I'm sorry, and you just are trying to make it end. But I can tell you this, you keep doing that, and you keep doing that, and you keep doing that, you're going to become filled with bitterness. You're going to be filled with probably wrath and rage, and you're going to become you're going to resent the other person. You're like, every single time a problem happens and I have to apologize, and then they just accept it and move on. They're like, well, okay, well, thank you for telling me you're sorry. All right. Hey, so what's for supper? And you're like, what do you do? When are you ever going to see your fault in this? But sometimes people will just, look, that's a recipe for long-term disaster. So you have to want to be sincere and ask yourself, why am I apologizing? Why am I apologizing? You want to be sincere. I think we can all say, not only do you want to be sincere, I think we can say that you want it to be in your own words, right? You don't want to have to get a public relations person to write your apology. You don't want someone to help shape it and say, well, you should have said it this way. You should have said it that way. Now, I know what the tendency to do is. You've messed up. The last thing you want to do is now mess up in your apology. But the thing is, you're a human being. If people are going to even judge your apologies, there's not much you can do. I think you would rather just stumble through it and apologize using the wrong words, but it's sincere. It's being real. So there should be sincerity in it. It should be real. It should come from the heart. It should express what you feel. And you know what? Another thing I think, sometimes when you don't think you did anything wrong, you shouldn't apologize. Now, some people say you should apologize because it's best to end it and to fix it. But again, long term, it will just create bitterness. Sometimes you know what you have to say. No. I'm not apologizing. I don't think I did anything wrong. You may be wrong in thinking you didn't do anything wrong, but it's better to stand your ground. Now, it may break up a relationship, but it's better to break up the relationship than just caving in to a fake apology, because sooner or later you're going to walk away from that and you're going to have resentment. It may be small, but that resentment will grow because you're like, I keep apologizing and I didn't do anything wrong. And they accept it and they act like they didn't do anything wrong when the reality, because sometimes you may apologize. I think this is another important point. Don't apologize as a strategic step. Like I'm going to apologize because if I will apologize, then of course they will apologize, right? If I say I'm sorry, well, then they're going to look, well, I'm sorry too. Don't do it as a part of a strategy. Your apology should not be a part of a strategy. You should apologize because you sincerely mean it using your real words. But it shouldn't be a strategy. If I say I'm sorry, then they're going to say they're sorry. What happens when you're like, I'm sorry, it was my fault. And they're like, okay, I forgive you. And you're like, well, wait a minute. I don't want your forgiveness. I want you to tell me you're sorry too. Like sometimes you do it as a strategy and it can backfire, right? You're like, okay, I'm going to apologize. That's going to defuse the situation. But of course, they're going to take a step back and they're going to realize what they did wrong. But sometimes they're just like, okay, I forgive you. And you're like, oh, well, that backfired. That didn't go the way I wanted to go. No. Come back and tell me you're sorry too, because really you're the one who should be sorry. I'm just saying sorry to get you to say sorry. Come on. What is your problem? Wake up. You can't, we've got to be sincere. It's got to be your real words. It's got to be real. And we have to ensure that we're not doing it as part of a strategy. Why are we doing it? I don't know. To me, this apology just seems, that's too similar. It's too, I don't know. Something went wrong here. And considering one happened 2 years before the other, it makes me feel like the current one, I mean, obviously the one in the past wasn't copying the one in the future, obviously. So the one in the future, it feels like, and if that's what happened, man, he just now made his situation so much worse. Because now when he comes back to apologize for his apology, is anyone going to think the second apology is any more sincere than the first apology? Or is people going to think that the second apology was plagiarized from just a more difficult source and to locate? We want people to apologize in a real, meaningful way. Do you find it difficult to apologize? Why? Saying you're sorry, saying you messed up can be humiliating. It can humble you. It can be difficult because you may be still holding on to the fact that you don't feel like you were that you did anything that wrong. And I don't know about you, if you have any level of perfectionism in you, whew, man, it can just live with you for weeks and months. I messed up. Stupid. I keep messing up. I can't believe I messed up. And you just like want to start beating yourself because you're so frustrated that you messed up. But see, then it becomes about you and you're not even worried about the other problem. You're not even worried about the other person. You're like, it's about me. That's narcissistic. And there's so many issues. You just think about apologizing and all of the issues surrounding it. So I know everyone's going to be talking about this pastor and his apology and whether it was plagiarized or not. And you may see this show up all over social media, and this TikTok video will probably go viral. I don't know how big an issue this will become, but I just want you, before we just start pointing fingers at him and judging, yeah, you can draw your conclusion, but step back and let's look to ourselves about apologizing. And just remember, we all mess up. We all mess up, and we have to be willing to accept an apology. And please don't ever say an apology is not sincere, that they're only apologizing because they got caught. Unless you're God, how dare you say that? How dare you judge the sincerity of someone's apology just because of the timing of it? That's ridiculous. I don't know why people do that. That's just so not fair. We all mess up. We all stumble and fall. We're going to have to make an apology. And many times we don't make an apology till maybe later than we should. The issue is it sincere? Is it real? Do I really think I messed up? Am I doing it just to try to avoid a problem so that I can end the conflict? But in reality, you become more and more bitter. Are you doing it as a strategy? I'll say I'm sorry, and then they'll say I'm sorry. There's lots of points I've given here. I know I haven't outlined it perfectly, but that's okay. I want you to think about just an apology. An apology. Probably within the next 24 to 48 hours, you're going to be saying, I'm sorry to someone. You're going to be making an apology. And I just want you to really think about the essence, the substance, the motivation behind your apology. But I'll end by playing this one more time, the controversy about this apology that this pastor made that seems to be copying one from the past. Here we go.
So I have an update on the pastor who made that misogynistic joke. So the Roy's report reported that his apology might have been plagiarized. Josh Howerton's apology sounds eerily similar to a different pastor's apology from 2022. Can you spot the similarities?
As you find your way to Psalm 34, I just need to address a thing.
I need to address a thing. I'm going to address a thing. Okay.
The Bible says in Proverbs 12:18 that careless words stab like a sword, and wise words lead to healing.
It says that careless words can stab like a sword, but that wise words lead to healing.
And what the Bible means in Proverbs 12, when it says careless words stab like a sword, it means regardless of your intent, like if I was careless with a pocket knife and it slipped out of my hand and stabbed you in the face.
And what that verse means is that like even if somebody had a steak knife and they like had the intent to cut their steak and their hand slipped and accidentally stab you in the face.
Church, I need you to hear this, okay? 3 things. I love you. I love you. I love this church. I love getting to do this thing together.
Hey, I need you to hear 3 things. Number 1, I love you.
I swear megachurch pastors are just cookie cutter versions of each other. Like there's no originality and no substance.
And that is from TikTok. Again, the account is April A. Joy. April A. Joy. And she posted that 20 hours ago. April A. Joy. I think if you just run that all together, no spaces. If you're on TikTok, April A. Joy. And you can look at her TikTok account and subscribe to it and follow it. I think her TikTok may be embedded in the Roy's Report article. Hang on, let me look here. Is it embedded? Hang on. No, they grouped the apology together. Okay, they grouped it together. The Roy's Report has their own video of correlation, and I think my daughter just sent me. Did she send me a second video? Hang on. Oh, okay. No, she's got a video about purity culture, I think from that pastor who had to offer an apology. So, yeah. So, you can, again, if you go to April A. Joy on TikTok, you can find all of her TikToks and about, it seems, about megachurch and Christian marriage and purity culture and wedding night and all of the things about, and you can, and I think that's the original comment really sparked a whole discussion about purity culture. And so that's kind of where I wanted to take it. Just like this, I wanted to take it more to apologizing and apologies and how and I want you to think about how you relate with them and how you apologize. And well, you can draw your own conclusions. I would love to get your thoughts on all of this. newsif@yahoo.com. That's newsif@yahoo.com. newsif@yahoo.com. Hopefully that was beneficial. And I am sorry if I messed up in any way, shape, or form. All right. There we go. Thanks for listening. Everyone have a great afternoon and a great Sunday evening. God bless.